Hey, welcome back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I've got, it's cold outside today. I have a really spectacular game to show you. I am so excited to show you this. I have his permission to demonstrate his game. One of our wonderful club members in the Backyard Professor Chess fan club on Leeches goes by the name of Joezerneem. He is from the Netherlands, and he is an exquisitely good chess player. I have played him several times. The last time I was playing him, I made a move, and then he took a knight, and I typed in a comment, "Oops," and he said, "Don't leave your pieces hanging, I'll take them." Just curt, blunt, straight to the point. So any advice for those of you who want to play him, don't hang your pieces, he will take them. I can testify to that. Joezerneem on a team event last year, April 7th, 2018, almost exactly 1 year ago today. They had a team of 10. They were playing in the Netherlands. They were playing another team. They had tables assigned to them, whichever tables they were going to play. He had table number 5, and he ended up having to play the other team's Grandmaster. And he describes how for 15 minutes it surprised him when he drew to play the Grandmaster. And 15 minutes before the game, he wandered around, cleared his head, and then sat down and got to work. I want to show you Joezerneem's game. It is absolutely sensational. Our club on Leeches has some exquisitely awesome people. All of us are friends and having a ball. Come and join us. We are having chess information on various openings. Right now, the big discussion now is the Scandinavian Open. And we are also discussing our big wins against people who are rated higher than us. I have beat 2 people rated at 200, just wiped them out, so that was impressive for my achievements. Joezerneem is playing the black. His opponent, the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster rating was 2480. At this point last year, Joezerneem rating was 2240. So it was extremely fun to see this game. E4, E6. You can see immediately that they're opening in the center, of course. D4, D5. E5, he's going to try to put, this is typical in the French opening, he's going to try to put a cramp in the opening, and it does somewhat cramp black, and the response properly is immediately push that C5 pawn. Fundamentally so. C3, this is all typical opening. Knight C6. Knight F3. And now Joezerneem goes Knight G to E7, and his comment, the comments I read here, unless I specify otherwise that they're my comments, are going to be Joezerneem's. He said, "I haven't played this line before." He said, "I'm well aware that Queen to B6 is one of the more popular continuations here, or the other one is Bishop, I do believe, to D7. Yeah, Bishop to D7. He said, either one of those two is the most popular approach. And he said, "I knew this wasn't common, but," he said, I'm playing a Grandmaster. I thought I'd throw that out there. So I've always wanted to try this line, so I'm going to try it." Now that tells you what kind of a fortitude of character one of our members in our club has. If I was playing a Grandmaster, I would stick as close to the books as I could. Here on the 3rd or 4th move, 5th move, Joezerneem is already choosing a much less common line that he's never played before. Gutsy. Really cool. Bishop to D3. The Grandmaster's opening nice. Now Joezerneem does Knight F5. Okay? Just keep that in mind. He says here it's uncommon to play knight f5 before taking on the d4 pawn first. Usually, you'll take that pawn. Actually, the pawns will exchange. Either that pawn or the knight will. Usually the pawns, though, because the other knight's here. So, but d4 is the... Instead, he goes to knight f5. Very interesting. D went ahead and took c5, so it's no longer possible to take on d4. The Grandmaster beat him to the punch. Is he in trouble here? He is in terrible trouble, and he does something to solve all of his problems. He once again pushes the knight to h4. And at this point you're saying, okay, I'm playing a Grandmaster. We're in the opening of the French, and he's moved the knight 3 times to the edge. You're going, is this madness or is this inspiration? Let's let Joezerneem describe his process of justification. Strange looking move, he says. Yeah. Definitely not the strategy that I would have chosen, but then I would have been terrified. Joezerneem was not terrified, he was just having fun. 3 moves with the same piece in the opening against a Grandmaster. But, let's observe something. The position is somewhat closed, so it's not that big a deal in a closed, semi-closed position to move a piece more than once to get yourself into a good position. Nothing's going to come blasting through that center because nothing can. So there's no attack going on. So, okay, that makes sense to us. Again, White himself has used several tempi. He did e4 and then e5. And then again, he did take from d4 and he took c5. So Joezerneem has not lost tempi as such, because the Grandmaster also has been making multiple moves with his pieces, with his pawns, actually. And then again, the other thing this move accomplishes is he said, I immediately threaten the important e5 pawn by attacking one of its defenders. Now, I've said this in videos before, actually. It was really wonderful to see his thinking here, because I've come to that conclusion as well. The Grandmasters have come to the conclusion. I study the Grandmasters a lot in order to try to improve my chess, and then I'm just sharing that with you in my Backyard Professor Chess videos. But so it's usually the bishop that comes and puts a pin on the knight against either the queen, or on this side against the knight against the king. But putting pressure on that piece and attacking that piece is attacking the center, because that piece defends that piece. By getting rid of that knight, if that is what he's deciding to do, he is helping undermine the center. And that's a very important pawn, that e5, stopping the center march of his pawns. Nice. And there's another reason still. Fourth, I have less space, which is true. Notice he understands this concept of space also. They all do, and now we're learning it too. So by exchanging a couple of pieces, it is to my advantage. The person who is more cramped, Jeremy Silman says this over and over again, if you are more cramped, it is probably more to your advantage to trade off a few pieces. If you can't advance to get more space. And at this point, Joezerneem hasn't been able to very easily. It's early in the game, so swapping a couple of pieces, not bad. So when you see the full context of his reasoning, we understand why he did that. Those knight moves make sense. Very nice. Very cool. Okay, so, well, the knight takes h4. That impudent horse. Get rid of that impudent horse. And his queen will exchange on h4 as well. Queen e2, developing. Bishop takes c5. The pawn falls. Good developing piece. Hitting the center, hitting the a7 g1, or the a7 g1 diagonal. Knight to d2. Further development. f6, a really important pawn move. Considering that that is the cramping pawn, you're not obligated to leave it there. So bump and hit the center pawn. The center cramping pawn. Yeah, right now it's supported somewhat, right? But at least get it addressed. Knight comes to b3. Joezerneem says that he was expecting the knight to come this direction. It would target the queen, right? But the play should have been this way, so he thought he went the wrong direction. Aha, éclou. He went the wrong direction. Bishop bumps to b6, doesn't want to lose the bishop right now at this point. And then he goes g3, and he says this is just a mistake. This is wrong. Here is his reasoning why this particular move is wrong. Obviously, the Grandmaster is going to want to take at f6, right? But he doesn't want the response to be the queen to retake. He wants to break up the pawns, right? Well, if you're getting taken that way, you're not going to retake with that pawn and goof up your king side before you castle, right? That's what the Grandmaster is hoping he would do. Instead, of course, if he took the pawn, he would take it with the queen, so the Grandmaster is trying to chase the queen off. But the Grandmaster missed a very important move here that was really interesting. Queen goes to h3. I told you that was an interesting move, but that wasn't the move I was talking about. But it is an interesting move. Come on, admit it. Now e does take. Notice how, in a way, Joezerneem baited the Grandmaster. He deliberately moved up and not back here to take from across. So he gave the impression that he was going to have to retake with the pawn, right? And instead what he does is he castles. Very clever. Nice. And he says after the game, when they analyzed the game together, and the Grandmaster was very gracious. He showed good sportsmanship. He was asking Joezerneem what he thought of several moves and all that. But he told Joezerneem, at this point, he said, I was so shocked. He kind of got up and walked around. He had to absorb it because he just did not see that one coming. That really surprised him. Yeah, go Joezer. Yeah, baby. So, it's very interesting. In fact, he says Stockfish in the analysis gives blacks the position better. It was a negative 0.5. Stockfish gave the better position to black here. White's position is very unpleasant at this point, and now you can't take on g7. You can't take that pawn. No way, because black gets a decisive attack after that. If you take that pawn, then you start getting attacks this way. So, he prevents the Grandmaster's plan of destroying the king cover on the king's side. And he also ends up with an advantageous position, which is a good attack position. Very nice, very nice. So, what happens now? You gotta continue developing. The Grandmaster puts bishop e3. He's gonna hit the bishop. That is helping support the f2 pawn, which Joezerneem is going to claim if he's not real careful here. And the reason he's going to claim it is because now he takes the pawn flat out, and now Joezerneem has the file. Rook on a partial open file. He's got the attack. He's got the queen angle. He's got the file. However, now his bishop is being contested. Yeah, so this is getting tight, quick, and in fact the Grandmaster realizes the strength of his position, and he says, let's swap the bishops right now. At this point, that does not reduce his attack by a whole lot, but now queen goes to d2. Joezerneem said it took the Grandmaster a 40-minute think before he finally made this move, and his suspicion is at this point the queen is kind of in the way of his own bishop. Yeah. So this move helps get the bishop to here, hitting the queen, trying to get rid of Joezerneem's attacking position. And let's just quickly say that's what he did. Then he could come to g2. That was the principal idea Joezerneem was thinking of why he moved the queen over to there. Yeah. So after that, he says knight to e5. Nice, powerful, centralized knight hitting the bishop, coming into this square, putting a nice fork on the king and the queen. That's a power move, man. That is beautiful to see. Notice that all of the pieces are coordinating very well into this kingside attack. Notice also who's castled and who's not. Yeah? Very interesting, isn't it? It just doesn't seem like he's going to be able to castle very easy or very soon. This prevents this move here. Hitting the bishop here, what this does is it prevents bishop from going to f1 to threaten his queen. And you ask, how does that work? How does that work? Because knight f3 check, right? And then the king will bump over. And then the knight will take the queen. And then the bishop will take his queen. And then he wins a piece. Knight takes knight. Because he can't retake, because that pawn is pinned to his rook. If he was to retake that knight, that's a that's the wipeout. Check. Then he comes over here and takes out. That's the game. So that is quite a setup that Joezerneem has put together here, isn't it? Very, very cool to see. Absolutely splendid. Now at this point, after Joezerneem comes to knight to e5, we see his opponent castle long on the queen side. Very interesting. Now, Joezerneem hits knight f3. And he said afterward, when he was analyzing this with the computers, it was at this point he felt he was kind of starting to drift a little bit, but and the engines said that he was losing a lot of the advantage that he had gained up to this point. Remember, he is now in the better position, according to Stockfish, right? However, here was his thinking, and it makes really good sense. He said, if I would have done the natural move, rook takes a2. Yes, I get the pawn, but look at the problem this is going to have. The Grandmaster would play f4. And this does two devastating things to Joezerneem's entire game. One, it closes off the f-file for the use of his rook. That's bad enough. But the second thing this does is it takes control of that very important e5 square. Yeah? And that's also important because the d6 pawn is backward and it will become a target. Right? And that's not good. From this point, if he took the bishop at d3, then queen would take d3. Oh, and that was if he had left the f-pawn there. From that point, if he had just taken the bishop and the queen had taken d3 and he had taken f2 like that, then the Grandmaster would take over the f-file altogether. And that is not something Joezerneem wanted. That would have been a disaster for his entire game plan had he done that. He would have swapped the rooks, of course. But swapping the rooks, now look who's in charge, yeah? And look at what makes the difference is the possession of that open file with the rook. That changes everything, doesn't it? Very interesting how that works. So, Joezerneem's concern seems to be justified based on his evaluation of the position. One pawn loses the f-file. That wouldn't be worth it. So this is interesting. So I'll take you back to where his game was, and you'll see how effective his ideas really were, regardless of what the computer engines say. So I'm going to call him Joezer instead of Joezerneem. If that offends you, Joezerneem, I apologize. I like Joezer. Joezer's move here to f3, giving an Alec and block sort of thing to keep his f-file, makes good sense. Even though the engine said, uh-oh, you're kind of goofing off here. That's not necessarily true. Let's keep watching. The queen does come to e3. Again, the backward e-pawn. Now, it is guarded at this point, of course. It's well supported. But just keep in mind, that was one of the concerns, is that backward e-pawn. Right? Well, queen comes way back to h6, and now it looks like he is completely losing all of his advantage here. Right? You can see what's going to happen. However, let's just be patient and keep watching. This is pretty good chess play right here. Swap the queens. Yowza. And of course, everything is gone now, right? Rook takes h6. Or is it? Let's keep looking. Bishop bumps back to e2. And rook comes back over to f6. Notice the care that Joezer is taking to keep the f-file. That's really important. It's the only file in the game, and he's got it. That's worth keeping. It's worth fighting for. A rook on a file works even against a Grandmaster by one who is not a Grandmaster. This is a great illustration, Yeah, very good. Very cool. A3. Comes up to A3. It was at this point that the Grandmaster offered Joezer a draw. And he thought about it for a while. He says, hey, I thought about it for a while. He said, I looked over at everybody else on the team, and everyone was still playing their strong player. The team they were playing was considered exquisitely strong, right? So he decided, I'm going to play on. Very interesting. He refused the draw against a Grandmaster. Man, if I could draw a Grandmaster, I wouldn't be able to sleep for a month. I'd be rejoicing. Yeah? All right, so what do we see? Bishop D7, knight to D2. Joezer has a question mark on this, and he says, I expected rook to D3 here. He said, however, the Grandmaster told him that after the knight goes to E5 and the knight goes to C4, and then, or the rook to E3 and then the knight to C4, that black would have been better. So that's why the Grandmaster went to knight D2 instead of playing with the rook, because it would have given black a better. Joezer said, I didn't quite evaluate the position correctly. He said, and at the time, of course, I couldn't during the game, but that's the way it works. So let's see what happens. Joezer went ahead and took the knight. Okay, let's take the knight, and the king takes the knight, and the rook takes F2, target, on an open file. Beautiful work. The only file. And Joezer owns it. Very nice. Good work. King to E3. Rook A to F8. Bring the other rook. Double it on the file. Use the file to attack your opponent. Man, where have we heard that before? Right? Rook to D4. He has a question mark here. He says the idea, the reason he's doing this is because he wants to get counterplay by putting the rook at B4. Yusupov, in his chess course, says if you can at all prevent counterplay with your opponent, by all means do so. However, that's too slow. That's what he said. He said it's too slow because now bishop C6. And there's something really beautiful about this move. And if you can't see it, I'll show it to you. But it's really cool. When he explained it in his notes, I said, yeah, very good. Kind of nifty. What he says is he is threatening this. It's crazy, isn't it? This bishop move is threatening E5. You go, really? Yeah. Because if he's able to do E5, the rook, of course, has to move somewhere. Then he's going to threaten D4 check. And after the king moves, he's got the rook. A beautiful discovered attack. Very clever. Very cool. So, Joezerneem, by doing this, makes the he forces the Grandmaster to leap because of this threat, this very real threat of losing the rook. He forces the Grandmaster away from protecting that H2 pawn, that very important H2 pawn, and now he can take the H2 pawn. All because he moved his bishop, threatening him with the pawn tactic and the discovered check. That's fabulous. The one thing I've noticed about Joezer is he is really good with tactics. He's been helping, encouraging me in my study of tactics, and I really appreciate that. But this is demonstrating to us we really need to know tactics. They really do make a difference. Very important one. Now the rook does come to b4. Joezer puts his rook, well, not that one, Carrie, this one to g2. And now g4, he pushes the pawn, and e5. Look at those central pawns. Who has control of the center here? Who is much more threatening in the center here? And it's because of the nature of the king of white, isn't it? Look at the difference in the kings here. Gosh, look at the difference in the bishops here. And look at the difference between the rooks in this game. Every one of Joezerneem's pieces are better than the Grandmasters, aren't they? That is a perfect Silman thought. Silman mentions that over and over and over again. Make your pieces stronger than your opponents, without question. And he's done an exceptionally good job at this. Rook will take the b6, extra pawn on the doubled b file. Rook comes to g3 check, target. King to d2, rook to f2, pinning the bishop to the king. Now this is getting tough. They are on move 31, yeah? So he goes to b4, and Joezer goes to d4. They're on move 32. C takes d4, and E takes d4. They're on move 33. Rook to rook to f1. No, rook to f1. Sorry. Yeah, the white rook comes to f1. And it's here that Joezer gave himself a question mark. He took the rook. And he said, doggone it, it would have been far better. He said we were short on time, both of us. And so when he came here, he said that would have been absolutely devastating to keep both of the rooks. He would have had him. He would have had him real good. Instead, he did swap the rooks because they were short on time. And rook takes the a3 pawn over here. So they got to hustle here. They got to hustle quick to get the time limit to 40 moves. This is move 35. Rook to, where are you? Rook to e6. Rook a2 check. King e1. Rook a1 check. King f2. Bishop g6. Just keep that in mind. That's a really interesting, subtle move. You can see Joezerneem's foresight here in just a few more moves with that move. Bishop g6 was important. I was blown away at how good that was. Rook to d6. Rook comes back to a2. Now they're on move 39, and so he said, I didn't mind repeating the same position a couple of times real quick with him to get to the 40th move by the time limit, and then they get their extra time on the clocks. So that's what this is all about here. They're not confused, they're not drunk, they're not staggering, they're not sleepy, they're just trying to get more time on their clocks. King f2, rook a2, so we'll hurry up just like they did, and then king f3. Because they didn't want to repeat, he didn't want to draw, he wants to keep playing to see what comes of it. Right? And now, Have we even noticed that Joezer has an incredibly powerful passed pawn? But now that he puts it at D3, you go, oh, wow! And look. And you go, yeah, but dude, I mean, the rook can take it. The bishop can take it, and then that way if the bishop takes it, then the rook takes the bishop. That's pretty stupid, don't you think? I mean, what's the big deal? Here's the big deal. I love how he did this. If the bishop takes, then it's pinned. That's tough, man. That is really tough, right? Because a pinned piece and it's attacked means the Grandmaster would lose that bishop and he would be down a whole piece in the endgame, right? That's clever. That is really, really good. So D3 is incredibly powerful. I'll bet at this point the Grandmaster kind of looked up and go, yeah, uh-oh, this is serious. Well, the king does come toward the passed pawn, and Joezer's going to start moving his king out. G5, and he goes rook to B2. Keep an eye on this guy. Rook to D5, rook to H2, rook to D7. There's no reason to give him the pawn, so he bumped his pawn up to B6. Rook comes to B7 now, though. Notice how the rook goes behind the pawn. In an endgame, that's what you want to do. Get behind the pawn, whether it's your opponent's or your own. That's the idea. Now rook to H1, hit the target. Yeah, the target that's looking at your pawn, yeah. Rook to B8 check. An intermezzo move, I suppose. King to E7, rook to B7, king to D8. Notice how Joezer is moving diagonally toward that rook. That's the proper way to do it. Otherwise, it'll just be a perpetual check. Eventually, he'll threaten the rook and he'll get him if he's not careful. So, rook to B7 check, king to D8, and now bishop to G2, looking for a target, of course, and D2. And here the Grandmaster resigned. And why is because after king takes the pawn, that's just pure torture. The end game is just pure heck for the Grandmaster because there's nothing he can do to save the bishop. He takes the bishop and now he's got the end game. He's a piece up. So fantastic to see that kind of a game out of one of our club members. So thank you, Joezerneem, for sharing your game with us. It has been fun to go through. I probably haven't done it justice. Thank you for your notes. Joezerneem's notes really helped make this game more comprehensive, and I really like that. I love games like this where they're explained what they're thinking and what moves are possible and all. So anyway, thanks for watching the Backyard Professor Chess videos. Be good, do well, have fun, don't lose a lot of sleep, drink lots of water, stay healthy, stay happy, stay wise, and whatever else you can think of to do that's fun and exciting in life, you know. Time is going by, so have fun and some excitement. Yeah. And in the meantime, I will see you in the next Backyard Professor Chess video.